Hello, 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 hello.
Right.
All right, hello, hello, everyone, and welcome to On the Count. I am your host, Pedro Lugo, and with me I have also Keone Stevens. We have our guest with us, Mr. Milton Tingling. How are you, Milton? All right, we have Milton. He's going to tell us a great story of what he's got going on. We really want to know a lot about him as much as possible. And
Now,
Milton,
Milton,
you have
now,
Keone.
Milton, to give you the background, I talk a lot about prison reform, uh, my dealings with the prison system. I've never been in it, but just people, family, friends. So I give that outside civilian experience. And Pedro here, who is one of my dear friends, he's also an actor and a model and acting modeling coach. That's how we met. But he was a correctional officer, a lieutenant, and a counselor for over 26 years, right, Pedro?
Yes, I was a lieutenant and counselor for 27 years by the time I retired. Retired in 2019. Just saw a lot of changes through that time. And now one of my goals is to be able to speak to those that have been in prison, worked in prison, bring out, because one thing that I've learned, everybody has a great story. Everybody has a story to tell. Everybody has a background, and that is what I want to bring out. Also, I want to bring out some good stories because there's a lot of success out there from people that come out of prison, but they don't. Those stories don't get told. Nobody ever gets to hear much about those stories. Are very few in between. Most of the stories we hear in the in the news is, oh, the guy went back to prison, he did this, or about how bad the criminal world is, and it's you know
It's an ongoing story for sure.
It's a yeah, and
Um,
that's what we're trying to bring out. We're trying to bring out some good stories. There's a lot of people who come out of prison and succeed, but they don't have the opportunity to share their success. They don't have the opportunity to share their stories and how they got where they are today. And that's our goal. That's one of our goals. We have several goals that we want to create with this show in the long run, but right now this is our main goal. Also talk to people who's been in prison, like ourselves. Me, I worked 27 years in prison and learned a lot. But we also get scarred. I also want to bring other people that's been in the business and talk about the business because it is a business. Prison is a business. I don't care how you look at it. It's a business for a lot of people. Okay, and it's work. But I want to talk also. This is just my goal is to bring other people that's been in business as well, been in the prison, has worked, and I want to know where they are today, what are they doing, and how they're making their daily life because it's a big change coming out for us as well.
So we've had ex-cons, prisoners. We've even had a retired warden on here. So it's still Pedro's first line that he always does. I'm stealing it today. We got to start way back, way back, way back. Tell us what was Milton doing and who was Milton before you had that prison stint.
uh, just a regular kid from New York City. That was interested in my surroundings, but a good student. Never really had issues with school. Always loved school, but the city, like most cities, it has like a economic pressure um, to just want to fit in. Not only to fit in, but just to survive. Even people that are making over six figures, they're barely just touching the surface to really breathe economically or financially, I should say. And at the end of the day, some people decide to make the wrong decisions to go after things, and I was one of them. And I started early, and first time I went to jail, I was on Rikers Island, and I did a stretch for a drug charge. I was involved. That was like around the stop and frisk, right after Giuliani time, Bloomberg, um, and I had got caught up selling narcotics to a undercover police officer, and they were like, either go to trial and fail and do 3 to 5, or take this year. So in New York City, Rikers Island is really county; it's not state. But if you talk to most inmates, they'll tell you that county is hell. Like it's not built to do a lot of time. It's built for you to get in and out, for you to go home, or for you to go to state. So anybody that's there is treated with just a little bit more harsh conditions than somebody. Not saying that going upstate isn't worse because you're locked in, but you're locked in. You know, you have a gym facility, you can go outside, your visits are longer, all kind of privileges that you don't get in county because you're not really supposed to be there past a certain period of time. And later on in the interview, I do want to bring up the speedy trial statute that is, violated a lot with, a lot of inmates don't talk about how that's violated as well, how they spend years in county facilities and just
So,
unhumanitarian conditions.
and
Um,
Rikers Island got a big story about
yeah,
not doing their speedy trial. So I know you're probably gonna bring that up. I can't remember his name, but I know you probably know who I'm talking about.
yeah. See, well, I mean, Rikers Island has a long history. I think it actually was like a residential complex at first that turned into a prison, but it literally is an island. It goes across water. You have to get there over a bridge. Um, and obviously, like anywhere else, there's a lot of corruption. You know, I was I was assaulted by prisoners, correctional officers. But one thing I want to bring up about correctional officers is that they spend most of their time there like us. Like they might go home, but let's say they're doing overtime. You might be on that island for 16 hours a day. You go home, you sleep for 4 hours, you know what I'm saying? You get ready and you come right back. So you end up building relationships with some of them. And some of them actually, if it wasn't for them, um, I wouldn't have fared as well as I did. Some of them look out for prisoners. Some of them actually care, beyond the job because they see the conditions. And then at the same time, I'm here with you. It's almost like I live with you, but I go home for a few hours. I come right back.
Oh yeah.
That's something we talk
And
about.
I just get like, I
That's
know you
something.
understand that side of it too. But I again too with the city, like I said, New York City has all kind of different penal codes that other states just don't have. It's like its own municipality in itself. It doesn't, it's a different place. So during that time, people were, doing a week in county for hopping the turnstile for a $2 fare. People were doing 30 days in prison for having less than a gram of marijuana. Whereas now in legal is, decriminalized in New York and everybody's making money. But the people that got those charges back then are not eligible for these things. Um, to be involved in these businesses that the government is now involved in, the profit side of it. And it's sad to say that, but at the end of the day, one thing I will say is that the average person that gets arrested in New York, it's a revolving door. So it is a struggle to keep out. And I'm not just saying New York City. I just keep referring to that because that's where I'm from. But I think all cities kind of have that same pressure, where you're kind of, especially back then, you're really kind of in a way dodging all police contact at all times, just because any minor thing could just cost you a week or two of your life or 30 days. And when you keep going in for 30 days, 2 weeks, 30 days, and then you just did 10 months, it adds up. And you look back at your life and you're like, wow, I literally lost 2 or 3 years not going outside. It's something. I'm one of them. Whenever I was incarcerated, I never went outside because I never wanted to think about that. I never wanted. Well, I'm outside, but I can't leave. So I would just stay inside. And then and the conditions, you already know, just scientifically how it is to not have sunlight. The conditions in southern states are way worse. I was incarcerated in North Carolina as well, about 5 years ago, for a different offense. But I was acquitted for it. It was more of a personal thing between me and my son's mother. Um, but I was able to experience the things, the conditions down here, which is a little bit more psychologically inhumane. Like in New York, you get music, right? You get access to outside television. Some places even have video games, access to internet, things like that. Down here, you have access to internet, but you literally have no clocks in the counties. You don't know what time it is. The windows are blotted out, so you don't know what time of day it is. Um, Going outside down here is going in a room with a hole in the ceiling, so you're never really truly outside while you're in county. And I met guys in there that were in county for 4 years, right? So
Wow.
If you go upstate, it's like, oh well, I'm upstate. I have different food options. I can listen to my radio. And not saying it's better because it's never better, to be incarcerated, but county is just no place for you to do hard time at all. And a lot of people are doing that, and I just can imagine the type of mental problems they have when they come home. Two biggest places that people catch PTSD is from being incarcerated in the military, and you know it 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 depends on where you are, but I truly feel like all of the conditions are identical in certain ways. But I will say that, yeah, some places are worse than others. And then I wanted to bring up I know I'm jumping around, but I wanted to bring up the speedy trial statute that I
No,
experienced,
you're
or
no,
how I was denied my constitutional right in North
you're
Carolina because I was
you're
in
fine.
county
Hold on, Milton.
down here.
Hold on, Milton. No, you're fine. We're gonna
No,
get to that. Hold on a second. So we're gonna talk about some of the things that you just talked about because Rikers Island. I'm not from New York, but I'm from Miami. It's Rikers Island's one of those prisons. No matter where you live in the state, you've heard of it. Where you live in the states. I've never heard of Hillsborough County until you mentioned it, and I live in North Carolina. So um, I want to talk about Pedro to answer what he's talking about with some of the conditions that um, he was under in county, the blotted out windows. Outside is not really outside. Is that particular prisons or is that a widespread thing? Because I know you worked in federal prison, but I know you know about a lot of the county and state prisons.
Th- that's a very particular prison. It's like Rikers Island is very particular. That's very independent. Rikers Island holds, I think right now it holds up to 5,000 inmates at one time, something like that. And that is a lot. That's a lot of inmates and not enough staff to be able to cover all that. Not enough time to investigate everything that goes on in there. People get lost in the system in Rikers Island. People walk out of Rikers Island without, oh, he was supposed to leave today. Who? It happens all the time. A lot of stuff that happens in Rikers Islands, they just don't even put it out because it's just so much going on there. It's just one of those prisons. That's why a lot of people talk about it. And there's a lot of story. There's a lot of history behind it and how it grew and how is just that bar. They keep growing and adding and adding and adding. It's just grown over the years because it wasn't supposed to be like it is today. That
When you
wasn't the goal.
when you
no,
have a
of course.
prison that's overcrowded, and one of the things that you talked about was not being able to invest because people don't realize in prison there's crimes committed in prison and you have to investigate. It's not like you're in prison, whatever you do, you're guilty of it. So if there's not enough time to investigate those things, you're going to have a lot more inmates settling those things themselves, right? I would assume.
Of
Uh,
course. And I mean, but that's not to cut you off, but that's literally most people's experience. They see that the inmates they run the prison. I mean, there's overseers, there's supervisors to not let things get out of hand or have the liability upon them. But in terms of like in-house politics, yeah, you walk in a house and or I don't know what they call it in different places, but you walk in
unit,
a
housing unit.
yeah, or housing unit. You walk in a housing unit, and there's somebody in there controlling the entertainment, the your access to the phone lines. I mean, all prisons is different. Like, I mean, or jails are different. When I came down here, the first thing I was like, well, who has slot time? Who has to fight for the phone? Because in Rikers Island, if you don't fight for the phone in front of a CO or not in front of a CO, doesn't matter. If you don't fight for the phone, you don't get to call your family but for 6 minutes a day. And the CO is gonna act like they don't see somebody that's controlling the only three phones that 40 inmates have to use during the day. And that's because the CO somehow knows them. They might be gang affiliated or whatever it is. And that's just my experience. But not all of them are not all of them have those relationships. But what I'm saying is that there are things that are overlooked, yeah, on both sides. And yeah, the inmates run it because there's too many of them. There's too many. How are you supposed to control these many people without help? You need
Yeah,
somebody that you have a relationship with.
you got to create a relationship. Who is who runs what, and try to make it work. Because in reality, most prisons, let's say during the day we have enough staff, but after 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, when staff go home, some of the other staff go home. the number of staff working dwindles, and after midnight it dwindles to small numbers. That's why we keep them, everybody at certain hours locked up. You don't come out. Everything is there, because and in all reality, if the inmates decide that we're gonna take over, they take over. There's nothing for. There's really nothing. We're gonna do what we have to do to make
Oh,
stop it and not let that happen. But in all of it, I mean, if I have just one staff member in a housing unit working, and I have 120 inmates there, in reality, how much control does he have? Nothing. He really don't. He really don't. All he's doing is just maintaining security, just making sure that everybody is where they're supposed to be at, and we are accounting for everybody that is alive.
hey,
That's the goal. That's primary goal, is to make sure everybody's safe, everybody's locked up. You're where you're supposed to be, and hopefully by between midnight and 6 o'clock in the morning, though, I have the same count and I don't lose one, whether escape or death, because there's a two ways they gonna go out. That's what I don't want. I don't want that.
Milton, one of the things we've had about three, we've had a warden that's worked with Pedro and two prisoners that ex prisoners who have worked with Pedro, and both of them said COs like him, Leos like him, that were always encouraging and doing the right thing and being respectful was a part of their path to getting out or and not coming back. Did you have anyone in particular that you can remember by face or name that did so right by you that it helped you?
I had a. I'm gonna say I can count on more than one hand. Um, I when I was in Rikers Island, there was a CO. He was a gang member and all of that. Because I'm was affiliated with 5% Nation at that time, and so was he. And he, I mean, he would look out for me and the people I was in there with, like telling if there were raids. He would look out and say, hey, whatever y'all doing in the back, y'all need to clean that up, because he's like, I don't want y'all to come back here because you're smoking a cigarette in the back. You're smoking cigarettes for dang near 6, 7 years of your life now. I tell you to come in here, and now you have to do another 6 months because you let up some tobacco. Nah. So there were people like that that overlooked the prison rules and looked at just a human being who was just like, this is wrong for this man to be enslaved anymore, taken away from his family for a vice that has no victim. There was a prisoner down here, I mean a CO down here that, I had gotten into an altercation. Somebody tried to stab me in county, so I got in a fight. They threw me in a hole, and they cut off all three forms of communication, which is a constitutional violation. Um, so while they were doing, and this happened, I complained about it and all of that, and I'm still looking to sue Hillsborough County now. I'm in process right now with litigation, but at the end of the day, everything takes time with court. But he helped me communicate with my family. Like literally, he brought me a pen and a piece of paper because they took away commissary. The only way you can have access to a pen and a piece of paper is to go to commissary. But if I'm in a hole, I don't get commissary. I can't use the phone, and then my visits are cut off. So you literally just cut off all three forms of communication, but you did it kind of in a way where it's like, well, he's in the hole, so this is why, but you're not supposed to. You're supposed to give me at least one. I don't care if it's just a pen and a piece of paper to give to an officer to put in an envelope and a stamp to send out to the outside world, to have contact with the outside world. So I was in a hole for 2 months in Hillsborough County, and I didn't have contact with the outside world. This CO was the only contact that I had between me and my family, and he did it at the risk of losing his job. Because I mean, even though he could bring up, well, you're violating this prisoner's constitutional rights. I mean, it's a ranking system. It's a ladder system. The warden comes in and he does. He's like, I don't like what you're talking about. You could easily lose your job, and a lot of them were very. I feel like there were a lot of CEOs that had good hearts that just kind of didn't help the way they could have, just because they were afraid about losing their money. And I understand that, because it's like, you got to take care of your family, and you were taking care of your family with this money before I showed up, so I shouldn't be the one to, you know what I'm saying? Like that's just not, that's not reasonable. I would never do that to another man, another human being, woman, anybody, you know. So I understand taking care of your family, but there were ones that risked their job, risked their livelihood to literally help people. And those are the ones that I'm like, you know, you guys did that with expecting nothing in return. And that's to me, that's like the definition of being humane. You know what I
Well,
mean? So
the 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 thing we get away from is the term of where you at. It's in a correctional facility, and correctional is to correct. That's the goal, to correct certain behavior and be able to send you back to society. That's the goal of correctional facility. County's a little bit different. County, they just locked you up because you just did. They arrested you. They don't have nowhere to put you, so they're gonna send you to county. County's a little bit different, and it runs harder than other places. It does. But that right there, they should not. You always got to have some way to communicate with the outside world. If you are in the hole, and for those that don't understand what the hole is, that is segregation, or just a special housing unit that segregates you for. You locked up 23 hours a day. You come out 1 hour. They should give you 1 hour. That's you. That's just a requirement. That's a federal requirement. They got to give you that hours. They're not giving you that hour. They're already breaking the law as well. So they got to give you the hour. They got to give you a way to communicate. So he's right. He should have gotten a way to communicate at all times. If you don't have a phone, I have to provide you with pen and paper and envelopes. And if you don't have the money, I have to provide you with stamps so you can mail those out. Okay. So all those things. You didn't have commissary, they got to give it all to you for you to communicate. It's mandatory. It's not like, well, I'm going to check this off and he doesn't have because he don't have commissary. That was one of my jobs as segregation lieutenant. I worked in segregation for a long time. I make sure, hey, I'll come knock on the door. Milton, how you doing? What you need? Well, then, all right, well, let's get you straight. Let's get this. This is what you need. Let's get it happening. Does it work segregation is one of the worst places. And it can be rough. And not just because of the staff, it's because people they lose their mind, or they want to get attention, or they know, well, I'm going to make it worse for the other person. They all comes out with different ideas. But segregation as the whole is one of the worst places you can do time. It's 9 by 12 most of the time. That's the length of just about every cell. Yeah, 9 by 12. The length of your arms, just about 6 inches, a little bit more, and about 12 feet. That's what you have.
yeah,
Ooh,
but you
that's
know, it
my
is a
that's my
meditation.
first apartment.
You know, it is, but you know, honestly, like, you know, it is a period of reflection. It depends on how you use your time. And I like, just to go back to, you know, people that came out and they changed their lives, and I know like a lot of the things I'm talking about would probably never happen in prison, at least not so blatantly. You know what I mean? It's just like, you know, these are obvious violations. It's more of a system. County kind of does what they do, but um, yeah, I mean, it also can be a time to reflect. You know, that silence and no human contact and all of that, you can go to deep spaces in your mind and actually heal things, you know. Take time out to read, take time out to exercise, take time out to work on yourself, because if not, you're gonna go crazy. And the ones
Well,
that don't go within, those are the ones that end up losing their mind, you know.
yeah,
So
that's the one thing I want to say. Some people do, they do heal. They make that connection. The time in there makes them, hey, this is what I need to be doing, and makes a big change. Some other guys, I really have seen them completely break down. Just they lose everything. They can't hold. I see guys that be tough, and anxiety hits them. Oh my God, that is just it's a complete change in personality. And you see a guy that weighed, he came in, he's big, he's 240 pounds, and he leaves weighing 160 pounds because his mind cannot take it. So there's a lot of changes, So I'm glad you did use that for your own benefit.
Yeah,
oh yeah, no, most definitely.
you always get the jokes of people who've never been to prison. I know if I go to prison, I'm gonna come out buff because everybody comes out with the chisel twist and the glove cap,
Most people
right?
just come out fat. That's just they don't really work out. They don't. Yeah. Just sit there and eat all day.
I see some game. I see both. I seen, they talking about that. I seen both ways. I think some guys gain weight because all they do is eat, lay around, and read books or don't do nothing. Then I seen other guys that just really made a big change to the side both ways. I'm going to change my physicality. I'm going to go and work out. I'm going to dedicate to this. I saw a guy weigh from 400 pounds to 210 pounds. He got
Right, right.
total change mentally and everything. So he used his time wisely. That's why I always tell you, use your time wisely. This is the time to prepare to get back outside. A lot of people don't realize that, and you probably have seen that also. A lot of the people use the time and they just waste the time. The guys that are really successful are the ones that go in, reflect on what they're doing, what they have, and how you're going to use that time to prepare to go back on the streets.
You
Yeah,
know, tell us a story about because this happens to everybody that goes to prison. You get people who want to give you advice. Tell us how because there are some people that give you great advice. Tell us one about somebody who was giving you advice and you're just looking at them like I'm not taking any of your advice. What you've
you
been
talking about, you talking about outside advice, like what you should do when you leave here, or what you should do while
just
you're in here.
advice, whatever story is funny to you that you want to tell. Because one person told a story about this guy's been in prison, you know, 17 times, and he's trying to give him advice on how not to get back in prison.
Yeah, you see people cut. I can't tell you how many times I was there, and I'll see somebody go home, and I'm like, all right, I got like a week left, and they'll come right back for a whole nother like 9 month stretch, and I'm like, bro, what are you doing? Like, you told
Before
me
you even left.
what's going on before I left. Like, I got there, they were like, yeah, I'm going home soon. I'm sitting there like, dang, I got like 5 months left on mine, but I'm happy for you. And then right when I'm about to go home, they're like, they're right back in there doing another stretch, and it's just like, that revolving door thing. But no, I do have a funny story. First time I ever went. This is the first time I ever like went to county and had to like do an overnighter and like stay there for like a couple months. So I went there and I see these people with this camping food and these noodles, and they have a garbage bag and they're doing something to cook it and all this other stuff. And I'm just like, how are they cooking food in a garbage bag and all this other stuff? And this guy comes up to me and he gives me, I didn't know he was actually showing me love and giving me like food, but he gave me like some noodles and 2 packs of fish, and I'm just like, what am I like? Where's the microwave at? Like, what am I supposed to do with this? Like, how do I even cook this? And he just started laughing. He was just like, you've never been in here before. Let's go further. And I was just like, yeah, I don't know. So that was like his advice, like this is how you cook food. That was like an in-house thing. But there's always some dude that's been in there for a long time, or he just keeps coming back. Like, this is his house. He knows all the COs, and he's like telling you like, don't come back here. But it's like you're not a good example of how to. So you kind of stay away from their guys. They're good in. It's funny. Like, there are people, like, I've met veterans that literally go to jail 3-4 months a year just because they blew through their checks, and they'll get arrested for something small just to have a place to sleep and
Yeah, I know
3 meals a
veterans
day. And
that will get arrested in the wintertime to stay out of the cold. Homeless
yeah,
veterans,
yeah.
and that's a whole other topic. What I want to ask you about is that last time. What was it, or what happened, or what event that made you say to yourself, "This is the last time"?
I mean, honestly, like, I haven't been like arrested for like criminal things that I've done. Now, I've been charged with things and going to court and got them dismissed. When I was a teenager, I copped out to those charges. I admitted my guilt and I did my time. That was when I was 19 years old. Last time I really did something intentionally and got arrested for doing crime was when I was 19, 20 years old. And ever since then, I haven't done anything like on my own part, you know what I'm saying, to be arrested. But you can be charged and locked up in county, even though they say innocent until proven guilty. It doesn't work like that. Um,
Do you think
so,
that's due to having a previous record? It's like you don't even want to get a
of
speeding ticket.
course, of course. Because, see, the problem is like, that's another thing too. Like, when I was younger, they said you can go to trial if you blow, it's 3 to 5, or you can take a year right now. So I'm 19 years old. I'm like, okay, I'll take a year, but that year came with 2 drug felonies. came with 2 drug felonies
Mm.
and assaulting a police officer because the police officer that chased me fell and sprained his ankle. And anytime a police officer gets hurt in the line of duty, it's an assault charge, even if you didn't put your hands on them. So they could punch you in the face and break their wrist, and that's an assault charge on you, right? So I have not only 2 drug felonies and a violent on law enforcement by the time I'm 20. So, job working,
And it doesn't go away.
it does not go away, especially the violent.
The
Now,
violence doesn't. Oh, every
no,
time
but
you go back and they look, oh, he's a violent. He assaulted
oh,
police officer. They're gonna be watching you all the time.
yeah. And so, I mean, there's a certificate of. I did the certificate of relief for the drug felony. So, I mean, it's been over 10 years. It can pop up. It's always there. Even if it's sealed, it's always there. Certain courtrooms, they can bring it up if need be. Um, but the violent, nah, that's not going anywhere. And again, like most people either they crumble on that, they go right back in, or they try to become entrepreneurs and just try to figure it out. Because there's really no other way. You're either gonna get caught up in the world and inflation and just slowly but surely make less than you're making because they're robbing your money. You have to figure it out. You have to do something where you get your time back and you can work for yourself. And you know, I don't think anybody when they're younger tries, makes mistakes or whatever it is, intentionally. They get caught up in things. If somebody would have told me when I was 15, I could have just, took my Series 7 and just been playing the stock market, I could have been a broker or been a millionaire by the time I was 22. Of course I wouldn't have. Why? The risk to reward is out of balance. It's crazy. So now it's I mean, one thing I'll tell somebody now that is a felon or going through things, like find whatever it is you wanted to do before you thought that this was the only way to make money, or before you tried to impress somebody or whatever it is. I wasn't trying to impress somebody. I just, in my neighborhood, I saw people make millions of dollars from selling drugs. So it's just like, no matter what family I came from or whatever it was, I idolized that. I mean, what kid doesn't? What man doesn't idolize somebody that has had some type of success financially? Because only 3% of the world only makes over $150,000 a year. So you see somebody that doesn't have education that's doing well beyond that, you're like, wow, you're in the 3% of the entire world, and
Pedro, isn't
that,
that something you said that you used to ask prisoners when you were counseling? What did you want to be before this happened?
I
Was it
did. I asked him questions about what you want to do before you did this, or what were you doing. But he just reminded me of something. Impressed, when he used the word impressed, and I remind me a story of one of the guys. I'm walking in the housing unit. I'm talking, and I see this guy standing there, and I stopped him, pat him down. We pat down everybody, and that's just for our safety and your safety. Just then I ask him. We have a short conversation and say, what got you here? And he said, well, nobody ever asked me what got me here. And I learned to ask that question a lot after that. What got you here? And he said, well, I was trying to impress somebody. He was a bank robber in D.C. He started robbing banks because he wanted to impress his girl, not just because of the bank. He was trying to maintain a level of life that he couldn't maintain just to keep impressing this girl. So he started robbing banks. And just because of that, he robbed banks and ended up in prison doing federal time. But nobody really asked him exactly what got him there. What was the reason behind it? Because a lot of times there's a reason behind people get to do what they do. It just doesn't happen. I had a guy, well, you had a job. What happened? Well, I got greedy. What happened? You got greedy. Well, because I was just selling a little bit of dope and I was making money. I had a job. I had a family. Then I find out I can make a little bit more money just selling a little bit more dope. So then I got greedy, and that's when I got caught up. So most of the guys that I get to talk to and I think about, they did have some kind of, everything was going okay. It's just all of a sudden they just derail. They just slowly, it's like a car that has a bad tire and it just start pulling you over to the side.
Make it bad.
Yeah, it just goes that way and they just don't know how to come back into the center. Prison gets you there. A lot of times do that. But there's people in prison that just don't matter how many times they come back to prison, it just doesn't fix them. It's just not it. They just can't see. They can't see the light. Now, I also asked Milton. I will ask a lot of some questions to the inmate leaving because I had to sign them out and sign their paper when they go out the door. And I always had a question. Hey, what are you going to do? How's your family? Do you have money saved up? What you been doing for the last year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 20 years, whatever you've been locked up? How you feel right now? And we talked for a few minutes. I usually knew by then before this guy's coming back or he's not coming back. Guys that had done, studies, saved money, have people outside, and they really could give you a concrete, this is what I have. This is it. It's not general, because a lot of guys give you some general BS.
My uncle's
And
gonna hire me. One of my family members is giving me a job. That's
yeah, one of my family members, who is giving you a job? Oh, I got a good family. I'm like, yeah, everybody got a good family. Let me explain to you, and then I tell them, let me explain one thing to you. Your family's doing everything they can to help you in here because you're in prison. Once you get out, then you come and ask me for $50, they're gonna look at you like you're crazy. Cause go get your job. You're not in prison no more. And then they find out, yeah, you were right. You were right when you come back. Family is important. I know you something about you that you are a father. You have a son. I will tell a lot of guys, you getting out. You got a family. But right now, it's all about you. When you get out, especially those guys that done 10, 20, 25 years and they get out, or I want to make up time, I want to be with my kid, I want to do this. And I said, that's fantastic, but you're not ready to do that. You are not ready to be a father. You are a prisoner. When you get out, it's going to take you time to be able to get that mentality, and it's going to be hard. And I tell them, be selfish with your time. Get yourself right once you get out so you can get your family together. Because if you're not together once you get out, it's going to ruin you. And I learned this from another inmate, and he was telling me that. He tried to make up so much time for his kids, then he ended up doing the same thing he was doing before he went to prison. And ended up in prison again.
one of the things it says in your bio. Milton says Milton now owns High on Money Entertainment and spends his days being a dedicated single father to his son. He is now that dad everyone knows for not missing a game, a meeting, or any event that has to deal with his son. He strives to show his son who he is and what he can be instead of what he was. Do you think that kind of sums up where you're at right now?
Nah, I'm definitely. My son is on the hip all day. I'm like one of the. I show up at the PTA. It's all women there.
He's a PTA dad, Pedro.
I'm the
Tell him
only guy there.
you
And
got to
then
tell
you
Pedro
get to
one
see
of your
this.
funny. You got to tell Pedro one of your funny PTA stories. How all the moms are like, "You're always here."
Yeah, they're like, "What are you doing here? Like, why are you involved?" I'm like, "I'm running for president. This is what I want to be involved." I mean, now, obviously, it's not a place where you get a lot of advice from other males and stuff, but you do see how there's a political system in the school, how your children are taught, what curriculum they have, like all kind of different things that go into the development. And the thing is, like most relationships, or even two-parent homes, the guy lets the male lets the female deal with that, and I think it should be joint. Or you should,
You're right.
if you're a single father, like handle that. Don't just like let the school educate your child. And you know, I come from a generation. My father had my first and last name. My grandfather had my first and last name. My son, he's the fourth. So very strong lineage. My father's a judge. My grandfather was a judge. My family comes from a big line of preachers and teachers, and very educated people. And one thing that I was taught is like the importance of fatherhood, and the importance of fathers being in their children's lives. So that's something that I can never give up. And I think, beyond personal reasons, that's a big reason why I'm never gonna be incarcerated, or what I mean. It keeps me focused because it really isn't about me. And you can feel your life force, like like they are. I mean, they're a blessing in one way, but you do have to have a reserve of energy to raise kids. You know what I mean? Like it takes a community, but you as a parent, you have to have that. extra, extra mile in you or extra wind in you sometimes to keep going on certain days. And it's a joy. It really is a joy. I think that kids, if you think about it in a certain way, if you react to it a certain way, they actually help you be successful because there's certain things that you just have to have or you don't. You either do it or you don't. There's no excuse after a while. Like in for me, I was always, like trying to figure it out. Like I wasn't incarcerated, but of course, there's always times where you're like, you might do something, you know what I mean? And when he came along, I was just like, okay, this is pretty much it. You know what I mean? Like I have to move a certain way, and I have to make sure that my legal affairs are in line, my taxes are paid, and just certain things have to be handled. Um, and I thank him for that. To be honest, he's made me a better person because I decided to be. Some people look at kids as like a burden, like you're hindering my life, and it could easily anybody could take it that way too. I didn't, but I see a lot of people that they're frustrated with their kids, and I see it as just motivation. I really do. It's just motivation for me to expand and to give you everything that I know you should have. You know what I mean? Like I mean, I would be like the first millionaire in my family. Like I would be the first because nobody in my family really. I'm not gonna say they don't care about wealth or anything like that, but they're fine. They don't. They never had aspirations to become very wealthy, and I've always wanted that. That's always been my dream, more than entertainment, more than playing stocks or options trading, whatever I'm doing now. Those things came later. These things now, just building wealth and also teaching children how to build wealth. Like imagine you had kids in like inner city communities that literally learn how to play the stock market or learn how to invest early. You know what I mean? Where it's like, why are you playing the streets when you can literally make a 50% return today? You're literally doing 40, 50% returns on drugs and risking your life, and you're not understanding the profitability and reward. You're not understanding what you're putting on the line just to generate money. And there's so many different ways to make money that when you make the wrong mistake, they're gonna cut you out of all the financial markets. I wish I could do my Series 7. I wish I could sell insurance right now. I'd be a millionaire just off that. That's an easy way to become rich. But all that stuff gets taken away from you. You don't just lose your right to vote. You lose your right to play in certain games to make money. So those mistakes, I've learned from them and all kind of things like that. But like yeah, like I'm not gonna say I don't regret anything, but I'll tell people out there that are like under 18 now and they're out there in the street and they're doing just go play the right way because you can literally be rich young if you just stay disciplined and follow certain rules. You don't have to do all this other stuff, and that's the lie. That's really the lie that we've all been fed. Anybody that's been locked up and all of that, that's it. So yeah.
So, I mean, it's the system, the education system that we have doesn't help us either. So that we don't teach out, younger generation. We are learning now that we're probably older more about how to create wealth than we ever did in the last 40, 50 years. We see in a whole, different view of how to create that money and not having to go into illicit businesses to be able to do it, because that was the thing. You wanted to make money. You saw all the people making money. Man, he's driving a Lexus. He's driving a Corvette. Why is he driving? How is he driving? Oh, he's doing this. Hey, Milton, come on. I'll show you how to do this. And I used to tell a lot of guys, well, you learn how to hustle while you were doing that in the street. You made a lot of money. You made all this. But what if you would have taken that hustling mentality and would have put it into this other business and done this? You think most of them would have, because I know a lot of inmates. They have the gift of gab. They're really good at selling. They're really good at doing stuff that you'd be like, wow. I used to watch them play basketball. I love going to play to when the inmates were playing basketball and they had the leagues and all. Because I saw guys out there that were talented. They should have been playing in the NBA.
Like you should have. What are you doing?
I'm
here?
like, wow, why can you do that? And it's just because the streets guide them the wrong way. They never have somebody to guide them, coach them into the right direction. Coaching is another thing.
Yeah, that's a big thing that was missed. Hey, look, I always tell people, because people like to use the excuse because of where I came from. They're like, but you got out. I'm like, I'm the outlier. I tried to sell drugs and join the gang where I live. But the sad part about me is all my friends in my neighborhood got to go do it, and I finally asked one day, I'm like, why do you never take me? And he literally turned to me because I talk differently. This is actually sad. He said, you might be something. These kids ain't got no future. You're telling me at 8 and 9 years old, you've already predetermined that
Yeah.
these kids ain't got no future. Come do this with me. But you left me because you thought because I talk different, because I went to a different school. Now, I thank him for doing that, but I tell people all the time, I was just lucky. It wasn't.
Don't feel bad. I went through the same situation. I had one guy tell me, "I don't want you doing this
Yeah.
because there's something better for you out there." Okay,
Yeah.
not you. I don't want you doing that. And they would just
Yeah.
literally tell me that. I'm like, what?
Yeah, I'm saying it's sad for the others.
Yeah, but
You said, like, what's funny is I look at what they're teaching today financially, and they're not teaching enough. But when I look at what they're teaching, it's nowhere. I'm like, well, at least if they would have taught us that, they get taught more than we did. It's still not sufficient. But Milton, I want to make sure we don't run out of time because something very important that you brought up, but I want to get a lot of background on you and tell your story. Is you wanted to talk about an educational thing called speedy trial that a lot of people don't know about.
Right. So with speedy trial, you're supposed to, it, from your first court appearance. I just want to make it as simple as possible for the listeners. From your first court appearance, from the moment you get arrested and you see the magistrate, or you go in front of a judge, from your first court appearance, it's 180 days for them to indict you, for them to actually find cause or some type of evidence behind the charge that they're putting on you. Now, depending on the charge, you might be released on your own recognizance, or you might have a cash bond, or or you might have to hire a bondsman. Keone, the camera's up, but you might have to hire a bondsman. That pressure gets put on inmates where they don't realize that you can actually bring up a constitutional violation, where they would have to release you after 180 days from you being in county because they violated the speedy statute law. And this applies into every state. It's 180 days. Now, I know prisoners that were like, well, I can't afford bond. Let's say, all right, I'm sorry. Let me just make a more simple example. Let's say you got charged with a very serious crime like murder, right? So now your bond is $250,000, let's say $500,000. The average person doesn't have that kind of money. They don't even have $25,000 to $50,000 liquid for them to go hire a bondsman to get out of jail. So what they'll do is, instead of pleading out to a 25 to life charge, they'll sit there in county for years and fight it. They don't have the bond money, so they're just sitting there. But the entire time they're in county, they haven't been indicted. There's no evidence behind the charge. It should not take the DA 4 years to figure out evidence of what they charge you for. So there's a lot of inmates in county that are sitting there right now, and I want to tell y'all right now, I don't care how long it takes, you need to file the legislation in order for you to bring up your constitutional violations. I'm suing them now because I was incarcerated in North Carolina for 9 months, so I'm going after the money. But I do believe that the reason why they move faster on my charge, because there were people that were sitting in there for the same charge I was in there for 2-3 years. I was out in 9 months, and I think that's because I brought up the constitutional violation. Again, they violated it, and like I said, there was nothing done while I was there, but I was released. So I will say to inmates, like, don't just sit there and just think that, oh, I don't have money to get out, or no. If it's been 180 days and they don't have any evidence, and then you're just sitting there and they're telling you to plead out to this, well, just take 15 years.
Just take 2.
Because it's pressure. Like, you know what I mean? You're sitting there and you're like, I don't want to do 15, but I don't have the money to get out, and county has a lot of like inhumane conditions, so you're like, oh man, this is hell. I might as well just go upstate, even if you didn't do it. And there's not a lot. I'm not gonna say there's a lot, but there are people that are incarcerated that are literally in jail because they couldn't take county. They just went upstate. They're just like, I can't beat the system, so let me just ride this out. And they don't realize that they have 6 months. They have to follow certain rules and regulations, And I mean, I don't want to get into how many
No,
constitutional
no, no, no,
violations.
no, no. You're good.
There's a
You're
lot,
good.
but I mean, that's a big one.
Yeah.
That's a big one for inmates that are in county.
That
There's two
that
things I want to say on that real quick. One, it involves Pedro. Pedro would always, and we heard this from inmates, would be telling inmates, get in the damn library and get in the damn books. They told me he was very good for being one of the officers that would do that. And two is, I know about the speedy trial. The only reason why I know about it is because there's a very famous YouTube video of a judge that got in a fist fight with a lawyer because he kept his cases were backlogged. So the lawyer wanted to do a speedy trial. He kept trying to get the lawyer to waive the speedy trial, and the lawyer said no. So he got in a fist fight with the lawyer, kicked the lawyer out, and then when he went back and asked the defendant, "Do you want to waive your speedy trial?" The defendant said no, and the judge said, "Well, that doesn't help me." And the defendant's like, "I'm not here to help you."
It's a yeah. In New York, they make you waive it. They make you waive it in order to get a reduced sentence. It's like a deal. It's like, well, waive your constitutional right, and we won't give you as much time. Like, you could get 3. We'll give you 8, 9 months if you just waive your constitutional right, because we really don't have evidence, and you don't know that. But we need to make some
they're
money.
not gonna tell you that.
Of course,
I'm
of
gonna tell
course,
you
it's
that.
a business.
So you need to sit down and always wait for the grand jury to bring the indictment in. If the indictment doesn't come in within the 180 days and grand jury can't bring nothing up, well, they just don't have anything. They got to let you out the door. And that's what a lot of people don't realize. Then when you start bringing that up, some people get offended about it. Oh, what, you think you know more than I do about this? Well, probably do, because you're probably reading stuff that I don't know. I usually just, enlighten me. Tell me what is it you know that I don't know. Because there's a lot of stuff that we don't get to know. But then there's a lot of people, that take it another way. There's a lot of people out there with cameras and really poking at the police. Oh, you can't do this. You work for me. Da, da, da. And then don't poke the bear. Don't poke the bear, because the bear's going to
Like,
bite.
I've never understood that. I try to avoid. I'm not sitting here acting like every single cop in America is bad. I've met terrible cops and I've met good ones. One, Ray Har, is responsible for me being here right now. But I try to avoid contact with police officers unless I need to. Somebody broke into my house, I'll call you. Other than that, I don't understand these people who go looking for them. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah, that's not. They're there to public safety, but they're also there to enforce policy.
Hey! We
They're
just
there
hit
to
a
make money.
landmark. We just hit a
Oh,
landmark. I'm so sorry. You know you've made it on YouTube when the sex spam start coming in your chat. That's when you know you've made it on YouTube.
All
Pedro,
right.
you have officially made it.
Oh, man. All right. All right. Milton, you also have one thing I want to talk about really quick. Also, you have a business going on. Tell me about what you're doing now. Tell us
okay.
about it.
So I do have an entertainment business that I started when I was 19 years old. Um, it encompasses a few things, but really the profitability of it was never. It was really for my enjoyment, to be honest. I just kept it open. I want to give it to my son one day. I do have like a music studio in my home. I let people that want to record for free. I just take credits off of their residuals when they put it out for streaming and things like that. So I'm more of a manager of artists in a way. That's just one thing I do. Like I said, the profitability of it is not really like at an extreme. I wish it was, but it's like a dream that I never let go. So that's when I say Higher Money Entertainment. The acronym is HOME. To me, home is always in your head, and wherever you go with family, you're always home. People that you love, you're always home. So it's a vibe. There's a certain energy behind it. And then
Nice.
the other thing I do is I do options trading. So I have a LLC behind that called the SAR Construction, and it is something that has been in the works for 2 years now, and I've been studying the market and things like that for a long time. I just never took it seriously. Never started a business behind it and did everything proper, pay my taxes and things like that. I was just kind of playing around with it. But now I've seen some success in the market, especially with GameStop, a little bit
No,
with
no,
crypto.
that's PTSD for me. Move on from GameStop.
No, I'm sorry. Yeah, I know. But that you should have took it out, man.
Just keep going.
They're doing it all the way up. You
Keep
just, come
going.
on. It's coming back
Keep
down. You
going.
should have it's okay, though.
Well,
It's okay.
Milton, I want to tell you two things that's going to happen to you for being on this show today. One, thank you for telling your good friend Keone Productions that you have a entertainment production company that you could be collaborating with. No, I'm just kidding. I knew that. But Weenie, Weenie Trades, who works with us on one of our shows called My Perspective Monday, he does a Weenie's weekly market update, and sometimes he can't fill in. We're going to get you trained up to be his fill in and get your company name out there like we do his. Also, he's a very big daily day trader, streamer. He streams 5 days a week from the time the market opens till about noon. I do a show every Monday on his channel called Lunchtime with Keone. I'm going to bring you on there one time, and then we're going to give you a free course. He has a course that's very extensive. It costs a lot of money, but you're going to get it for free.
Awesome. Appreciate that.
Nice.
Because one of the things we talk about on this channel with me and Pedro, after we talk about this, we talk about the prison stories and all those things, we always talk, and then we look at the camera and talk to the community. And when I always say this, at least I know I always say it, we have to do a better job at rehabilitation. And part of the rehabilitation on our side is hiring people that have been in prison. Don't just take a resume when people are being honest and saying, I was incarcerated, and throwing that resume out the window. That's another chance that person can't make ends meet and ends up right back where they left. So we got to do a better job. I love these companies that hire ex-cons, that purposely go and do that, because we got to do a better job. If somebody does a crime and serves their time, how long should they have to pay for it? Is where I always come at it.
Right. And that should not be it. That's the other thing. You should not be paying the rest of your life for the one crime that you committed. And you already pay society. That was the goal when they created the Constitution. You do go to jail for whatever but you come back into society and just rebuild from there. They got it. That was the goal. It does happen. We do things that will end up in jail. We got to have those laws. We got to have. If not, it will be chaos, and we won't be able. But even in prison, when there is chaos, there's somebody in control. A lot of people don't realize when there is a riot and something in the prison goes wrong, and there's a riot, there's always somebody in control. Might not be us, but there's always one or two inmates that's controlling everything and maintaining everything flowing like they want it to flow. The chaos begins, but there's always control. We all live in some kind of controlled society. It just whether you want to or not. There's got to have laws. We got to have rules and regulations, and we got to follow those.
And that's everybody.
And that's everybody.
Citizens and the people who are upholding the law.
Yeah. There should be people that oversee the leaders. Everybody should have somebody to look up to or kick it up to. I think that's the problem with government now. It's not about, even though I'm sorry, this is a Republican form of government. There's no mention of democracy in the Constitution, but that's a whole nother conversation. But there's nobody, our leaders there's nobody to watch over what they're doing. I mean, there's always one branch of government to hold the other one accountable, but you look at Congress and it's like, well, who's watching them?
That's an easy question. There's people watching them. People with a lot of money. They're telling them what to do.
Oh, that's another conversation.
Yeah, that's another conversation. So as usual, Milton, thank you for being here. Don't cut out yet. Pedro, I always let you take us out because at the end of the day, I'm just here along for the ride, and it's your show.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for watching us today. Thank you. Hey, also I want to put this out. Our email is onthecount.podcast@gmail.com. If you have any stories you want to contact us, please use that email. Again, onthecount.podcast@gmail.com. Give us a call. Give us an email. Send us more. We always looking for people to interview to have in the show. So I want to say thank you, Milton. Thank you, Keone. It's been a great interview. It's been a lot of fun. We're going out the door. Thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of your day and a holidays coming about. Everybody be blessed. Be safe. See y'all soon.
All right,
Be
I'm
safe,
about
man.
to be
Be safe.
high on something.
Yes.
All right.